I never thought I would be the kind of person who installed a camera inside my own family home. Even saying that out loud makes me feel sick. Because when people hear hidden camera, they imagine suspicion. They imagine betrayal. They imagine someone already convinced that the people around them are dangerous. But that wasn't me. At least, not at first. At first, I was just tired. Tired from working double shifts. Tired from answering late-night phone calls. Tired from sending money every month and still being told it wasn't enough. Tired from feeling like the entire weight of my family had somehow been placed on my back, and if I even bent slightly, everyone would fall and blame me for it. My name is Daniel. I was 32 years old when this happened. And for most of my life, I believed I was the lucky one in my family. That's what my mother always told me. Daniel, you're strong. You can handle things. Whenever my younger sister Emily cried, my mother held her. Whenever my younger brother Mark messed up, my father defended him. Whenever I struggled, everyone looked at me like struggle was my job. I didn't notice it when I was a kid. Back then, I thought being trusted meant being loved. I thought when my mother said, "You're the responsible one," it was a compliment. It took me years to understand that sometimes, responsible is just another word for available. Available to fix problems you didn't create. Available to pay bills nobody else planned for. Available to forgive things nobody apologized for. My father, Robert, used to be the only person in the house who saw me as more than a wallet or a backup plan. He was quiet, not emotional, not the kind of man who said, "I love you" easily. But he showed it in small ways. When I was 16 and my bike chain broke, he stayed up late in the garage fixing it before school the next morning. When I got my first job at a grocery store, he drove me there every Saturday, even though it meant waking up early on his only day off. When I moved out, he slipped $200 into my jacket pocket and said, "Don't tell your mother. She'll say I'm spoiling you." That was my dad. A hard man, maybe. But fair. At least, that's what I thought. Then he had the stroke. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I remember because I was sitting in traffic, eating a gas station breakfast sandwich, when Emily called me. She was crying so hard I couldn't understand her. "Dad collapsed," she said. "Mom found him in the bathroom. Daniel, you need to come." I left work, drove 3 hours back to my hometown, and found my father in a hospital bed, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. His right side was weak. His speech was slow. His eyes were still sharp, though. When he saw me, he tried to smile. And I don't know why, but that broke me more than seeing him hooked up to machines. Because my father was the man who fixed things. And now he couldn't even lift a glass without help. The doctors said he would need therapy. Medication. A safer home environment. Someone to help with basic things until he improved. My mother cried in the hospital hallway, and said she didn't know what she was going to do. Emily hugged her and cried too. Mark stood there with his hands in his hoodie pocket, silent, staring at the floor like the whole situation was an inconvenience he hadn't agreed to. And me? I started making plans. Because that's what I always did. I spoke with the doctor. I asked about costs. I contacted insurance. I arranged physical therapy. I called my boss and asked for remote work for 2 weeks. I drove my mother home, checked the house, removed rugs so Dad wouldn't trip, bought a shower chair, installed grab bars in the bathroom. And paid for the first round of medication out of my own pocket, because my mother said she didn't have the money. Nobody asked if I could afford it. They just assumed I would find a way. And I did. For 6 months, I sent money every 2 weeks. Sometimes $500. sometimes 700. Once, after my mother called saying Dad's medication wasn't covered and she was afraid he'd get worse overnight, I sent $1,200 from my emergency savings. I told myself it was for Dad. That made everything easier to accept. I wasn't being used. I was helping my father. There's a difference. At least, I thought there was. The calls became routine. My mother would call around the same time every month, usually in the evening. Her voice always had that tired, trembling tone. Daniel, I hate asking. But she never hated asking enough to stop. She needed money for therapy. Then for groceries. Then for repairs. Then for an overdue electric bill. Then for a special recliner chair Dad supposedly needed. Then for a new prescription. Then for property taxes. Every time, she promised it would be the last emergency for a while. And every time, another emergency appeared. I didn't tell anyone how bad things got for me. I stopped going out with friends. I cancelled my gym membership. I sold my motorcycle. I postponed dental work. I ate cheap food and convinced myself I was doing something noble. And whenever I visited, my mother made sure I saw just enough to keep believing. Dad in the recliner, wrapped in a blanket. Pill bottles on the kitchen counter. A stack of medical papers near the phone. Her exhausted face. Emily stopping by with coffee and saying, "Mom is doing everything. She's amazing." Mark complaining that he wished he could help more, but work had been slow. Looking back, I should have noticed the details that didn't fit. Like the fact that Mark always had new sneakers. Like the fact that Emily posted restaurant photos every weekend. Like the fact that my mother's nails were always done, even while telling me she couldn't afford groceries. But guilt can make you blind. Especially family guilt. Family guilt is different from regular guilt. Regular guilt says, you did something wrong. Family guilt says, you are wrong unless you keep giving. And I kept giving. Until one night, my father called me. Not my mother. Not Emily. My father. That was unusual because after the stroke, he hated using the phone. His speech was slower, and he got frustrated when people asked him to repeat himself. But that night, around 11:40 p.m., my phone rang. Dad? For a few seconds, all I heard was breathing. Then he said, slowly, Danny. I sat up in bed. Dad? Are you okay? There was another pause. Then he whispered, don't tell your mother I called. My chest tightened. What's going on? He breathed heavily, like speaking cost him energy. I need you to come. I was already reaching for my keys. Now? No, he said. Soon. Quiet. Dad, are you in danger? He didn't answer right away. Then he said something I will never forget. They think I don't know. The line went silent. Dad? Who thinks you don't know? He didn't respond. Then I heard movement in the background. A door opening. My mother's voice, distant but sharp. Robert? Who are you talking to? The call ended. I called back immediately. No answer. I called again. No answer. Then my mother texted me from Dad's phone. Sorry, honey, your father got confused. He's been having one of those nights. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. That phrase kept me awake until sunrise. The next morning, I called my mother. She sounded calm. Too calm. Oh, Daniel, you know your father. Since the stroke, he gets paranoid sometimes. Paranoid about what? She sighed. About money. About people stealing. About me hiding things. The doctor said confusion can happen. I asked to speak to him. He's sleeping. I called again that afternoon. He's in therapy. That evening. He's eating. The next day. He's resting. For 3 days, I couldn't get my father on the phone. Then Emily called me. Her voice had that careful tone people use when they are trying to sound concerned, but are really trying to control the conversation. Daniel, Mom told me Dad called you. Yeah? You can't let him stress you out. He's not himself. What did he mean when he said, they think I don't know? Emily was quiet. Then she laughed softly. Probably some TV thing. He watches crime shows all day. I didn't laugh. She noticed. Daniel, please don't start drama. Mom is exhausted. She doesn't need you accusing her of something because Dad is confused. That sentence worked exactly the way she wanted it to. It made me feel ashamed. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Dad was confused. Maybe I was letting stress turn me suspicious. So I drove down that weekend. I didn't tell them until I was already on the road. When I arrived, my mother looked surprised, then annoyed, then quickly hugged me. You should have told me. The house is a mess. It wasn't. The house looked cleaner than usual. Too clean. Dad was in his bedroom. When I walked in, he was awake, staring at the window. Hey, Dad. He turned his head slowly. For a second, his eyes softened. Then he glanced behind me. My mother was standing in the doorway. Robert, look who came to visit. Her voice was bright. Performative. I sat beside him. How are you feeling? He looked at my mother again. Then he said, fine. Just one word. Flat. Careful. I tried to stay alone with him, but somehow, someone was always there. My mother brought tea. Emily arrived unexpectedly with muffins. Mark came over to check on Dad, even though he spent most of the time on his phone. Every time I got close to a private conversation, somebody interrupted. That evening, while my mother and Emily were in the kitchen, I walked past the hallway and saw Mark coming out of Dad's room. He was holding something behind his back. When he saw me, he froze. What are you doing? He rolled his eyes. Relax. Dad dropped his remote. What's behind your back? His face changed. Just for a second. Then he pulled out a pack of cigarettes. Happy? Since when do you smoke in Dad's room? I don't. I was hiding it from Mom. He pushed past me. Later, I checked Dad's room. Nothing looked obviously wrong. But Dad was awake. His eyes followed me. I leaned down and whispered, Dad, talk to me. His hand moved slightly on the blanket. He pointed toward the wall. At first, I didn't understand. Then he whispered, not here. I felt cold all over. Where? His mouth trembled with effort. Kitchen. Night. Before I could ask anything else, my mother called from the hallway. Dinner's ready. That night, I pretended to fall asleep on the couch. I listened to the house settle. My mother's bedroom door closed. Emily left around 9. Mark left around 10, or at least I thought he did. Around midnight, I heard movement. Soft footsteps. The kitchen light clicked on. I waited. Then I got up quietly and walked down the hall. My father was standing in the kitchen. Standing. Not well. Not steady. But standing. He was gripping the counter with his left hand. His right leg dragged slightly, but he wasn't helpless. Not the way my mother had been describing. "Dad," I whispered, rushing to him. He raised a finger to his lips. Then he pointed to a drawer. I opened it. Inside was an envelope. My name was written on it in my father's shaky handwriting. Before I could open it, Dad grabbed my wrist. His grip was weak, but desperate. "Not here," he whispered. Then we heard a noise upstairs. A floorboard creak. Dad's face changed. Fear. Real fear. He took the envelope back and pushed it behind the toaster. My mother's voice came from the dark hallway. "Robert?" I turned. She was standing there in her robe, looking at us. "What are you doing?" Dad stared at the floor. I said he wanted water. Her eyes moved from me to him. Then she smiled. But it wasn't warm. "Daniel, go sleep. I'll take care of your father." I didn't move. "I can help him back." "No," she said. "Just that." "No." Then softer, "You have a long drive tomorrow. Go rest." Dad looked at me once. And in that look, I saw it. He was warning me. So I went back to the couch. But I didn't sleep. The next morning, the envelope was gone. When I asked Dad about it, he stared at the TV and said nothing. When I asked my mother, she frowned. "What envelope?" That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. Something was wrong. Not maybe. Not possibly. Wrong? I drove home that afternoon with my hands tight on the steering wheel, replaying every detail. Dad's call. His fear. Mark leaving his room. The envelope. My mother appearing in the hallway like she had been listening. That night, I searched my mind for a normal explanation. Maybe Dad had hidden cash and Mom was worried he'd misplace it. Maybe there were documents she didn't want him stressing about. Maybe Mark had taken something small. But none of those explanations matched the fear in my father's eyes. I considered calling Adult Protective Services. I considered calling a lawyer. But I had no proof. All I had was a feeling. And feelings don't protect people. Proof does. The next weekend, I went back with groceries, cleaning supplies, and a small indoor security camera. I'm not proud of that. I need you to understand that. I didn't do it because I wanted secrets. I did it because my father looked at me like a man trapped inside his own home. I told myself it was for his safety. I told myself if I was wrong, I would delete everything and hate myself quietly. I placed it in the living room, on a shelf filled with old family photos and dusty ceramic decorations my mother never moved. It faced the main room, part of the hallway, and just enough of the kitchen doorway to show who came and went. I didn't put it in a bedroom. I didn't put it anywhere private. I just needed to know what happened when nobody thought I was watching. For 2 days, nothing happened. My mother watched daytime TV. Dad sat in the recliner. Mark came over and ate food from the fridge. Emily visited and talked loudly about wedding venues, even though she wasn't engaged yet. I almost felt stupid. Then Monday night happened. It was 9:17 p.m. I remember the exact time, because I was sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, trying to finish a report for work when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the live feed. At first, I saw my mother walking through the living room with a glass of wine. Not tea. Not water. Wine. That by itself meant nothing. She was allowed to drink. But something about the way she moved caught my attention. She wasn't tired. She wasn't fragile. She wasn't the exhausted caregiver she performed when I visited. She looked relaxed. Almost cheerful. She sat on the couch and called out, "You can come in now." A few seconds later, Emily entered from the front door. Behind her was Mark. And behind Mark was my Uncle Stephen, my mother's older brother. I hadn't seen him in months. He was the kind of man who always smelled like cigarettes and cheap cologne, always had advice, always found a way to profit from someone else's problem. My mother hugged him. Emily dropped shopping bags on the floor. Mark opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. Then my mother said something that made me sit completely still. "Daniel sent the money." Emily clapped her hands once. "Finally." Mark laughed. "Told you he would. He always does." My stomach turned. My mother took a sip of wine. "He asked questions this time." Uncle Stephen sat down heavily. "About what?" "Your father calling him." Emily rolled her eyes. "God, Dad is becoming a problem." "A problem?" "My father was a problem." I stared at the screen, unable to breathe normally. Mark said, "Just keep his phone away from him." My mother snapped, "I do." "He must have taken it from the nightstand." Emily laughed. "Maybe he's not as useless as we thought." My hands started shaking. Then Uncle Stephen said, "You people need to be careful. If Daniel starts poking around before the papers are done, this whole thing gets messy." "Papers? What papers?" My mother leaned back. "He won't. Daniel is easy. You just make him feel guilty and he pays." Emily smiled. That smile hurt more than the words. Because it was casual. Not evil movie villain casual. Family casual. Like they had said versions of this before. Like my love was a system they understood. Mark walked into view holding a folder. "Speaking of papers, when do I get my part?" Uncle Stephen pointed at him. "You get your part when the house sells." "The house?" "My childhood home. The one my father spent 30 years paying off." My mother said, "We are not calling it a sale yet." "What are we calling it?" Mark asked. "A transfer," Uncle Stephen said. "Then a sale. Cleaner that way." Emily sat forward. "And Daniel can't stop it." My mother laughed quietly. "Daniel doesn't even know." Uncle Stephen said, "Robert's signature is the only issue." Everything inside me went cold. Then Mark said, "He can barely write." Uncle Stephen shrugged. "That's why we practiced." "Practiced?" "My father's signature." I leaned closer to the screen, hoping I had misunderstood. Emily lowered her voice. "Is that, like, illegal?" Nobody answered. Then all of them laughed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough to tell me the answer didn't matter to them. My mother said, "Don't act innocent, Emily. Your wedding fund is coming from this too." "I don't even have a fiancé," Emily said. "You will," Mark said. "Once you stop scaring men away." They laughed again. Then my father appeared in the hallway. He was holding onto the wall. Nobody noticed him at first. He stood there in his pajamas, thinner than I remembered, listening to them talk about selling the house he still lived in. My mother saw him first. Her face changed instantly. "What are you doing out of bed?" Dad didn't answer. He looked at the folder in Mark's hand. Mark tucked it behind his back. Dad slowly said, "My house." His words were uneven, but clear. My mother stood. "Robert, go back to bed." "My house," he said again. Emily groaned. "Mom, do something. Do something." Like he was a dog barking during dinner. My mother walked to him. Her voice became soft, but not kind. Robert, you're confused. He shook his head. No, yes, you are. No, then Mark stepped toward him. Dad, don't start. My father looked at him. And there was a sadness in his face I will never forget. Not fear this time. Sadness. Like he had finally accepted that his son was part of it. He tried to speak, but struggled. Mark turned away. This is why we need to move faster. My mother grabbed Dad's arm. Not gently. He winced. I stood up from my kitchen table, like I could somehow reach through the screen. Don't, I whispered. But of course, nobody heard me. Dad tried to pull away. My mother said, Robert, stop embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing yourself. The man who had fed us, clothed us, worked through back pain and winter mornings and double shifts at the plant, was embarrassing himself because he didn't want his family stealing his house. Uncle Stephen stood up. Get him settled. We'll continue in the kitchen. My mother led Dad back down the hallway. The camera couldn't see inside his room. But I could hear voices. Dad's low, broken protest. My mother's sharp whisper. Then a sound. A thud. Not loud. But final. Like someone had fallen against furniture. I grabbed my phone and called the house. No answer. I called again. No answer. On the camera, Emily looked toward the hallway. Is he okay? Mark drank his beer. He falls all the time. I called my mother's cell. She declined. I called again. Declined. Then she appeared in the living room, breathing hard. He's fine. Uncle Stephen asked, is he going to keep doing this? My mother wiped her hands on her robe. Not if Daniel stops visiting unexpectedly. Emily said, maybe we should put him in a home. My mother snapped, homes cost money. Mark said, unless Daniel pays. And they laughed again. That was the exact moment something inside me changed. Not exploded. Not snapped. Changed. Quietly. Permanently. People imagine betrayal as a dramatic moment. A scream. A slammed door. A confrontation in the rain. But real betrayal is often silent. It's sitting alone at your kitchen table at 9:46 p.m., watching the people you love reveal that they have been studying your kindness like a weakness. I saved the footage. Then I drove. I don't remember deciding to drive. One moment I was in my apartment. The next, I was on the highway, headlights cutting through the dark, my phone on the passenger seat, my father's broken voice echoing in my head. My house. My house. By the time I reached my hometown, it was nearly midnight. The house lights were mostly off. My car rolled into the driveway quietly. For a second, I just sat there. This was the house where I learned to ride a bike. The house where my mother made pancakes on snow days. The house where Emily and I built blanket forts. The house where Mark broke my nose by accident with a baseball bat and cried harder than I did. How do people become strangers in a place filled with memories? How do you walk into the same living room and find out love was never evenly distributed there? I used my old key. The door opened with a soft click. The house smelled like lavender cleaner and old wood. I walked down the hall to my father's room. He was awake. Of course he was. A lamp glowed beside his bed. His face turned toward me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then his eyes filled with tears. I had seen my father cry only once before, at his own mother's funeral. That night was the second time. Danny, he whispered. I went to him. Dad, I know. He closed his eyes. His mouth tightened like he was trying not to break. I know, I said again. He tried to lift his hand. I took it. His fingers were cold. I am getting you out of here. His eyes opened. Fear flashed across his face. Tonight? Yes. No, Dad, he gripped my hand. Papers. I know about the papers. He shook his head. Drawer. I followed his gaze to the nightstand. I opened the drawer. Inside were tissues, reading glasses, a flashlight, and beneath everything, a folded plastic grocery bag. In the bag were documents. Bank statements. Property papers. A copy of my father's will. And a handwritten letter. My name was on it. The envelope. He had found a way to hide it again. I put everything in my jacket. Then I helped him sit up. He was stronger than my mother had told me, but weaker than he wanted me to see. Every movement took time. Every breath sounded heavy. We made it to the hallway. And then the bedroom light behind us turned on. My mother stood in her doorway. At first, she looked confused. Then she saw me holding Dad. Her face hardened. What are you doing? I didn't answer. She stepped into the hallway. Daniel. Still I didn't answer. My father leaned on me. We kept moving. Daniel, stop right now. Her voice rose. A voice I remembered from childhood. The voice that made me freeze when I had done something wrong. But I wasn't a child anymore. And this time, I hadn't done anything wrong. She followed us. Your father can't leave. He has medication. He has appointments. I stopped at the front door and turned around. For what? She blinked. What? What appointments? Her mouth opened slightly. I said, name one. She looked furious. Not scared. Furious. Because I had stepped out of my role. I wasn't the guilty son anymore. I was asking questions. And in my family, that was rebellion. She lowered her voice. Your father is sick. You are being dramatic. I looked at her. I saw the video. Her face changed. For 1 second, all the blood seemed to drain from it. Then she recovered. What video? The one where you all talked about selling his house. She stared at me. The one where Mark had the folder. The one where Uncle Stephen talked about signatures. The one where you said I was easy. Silence. The house held its breath. Then she whispered, you put a camera in my house. I almost laughed. That was what offended her. Not the theft. Not the lies. Not the way she treated my father. The camera. I said, Dad's house. Her eyes moved to him. Robert, tell him he's confused. My father straightened as much as he could. His voice was weak, but clear. No, one word. And it was enough. My mother's face twisted. After everything, after all the manipulation, after all the years of controlling the room with tears and guilt, that one word from him took something from her. Power. She stepped toward me. You have no idea what I've sacrificed. I said, then explain it to a lawyer. That stopped her. I opened the door. She grabbed my arm. Daniel, don't do this. We're your family. I looked at her hand on my arm. Then at her face. That sentence used to work on me. We're your family. Like family was a debt. Like blood was a contract I signed before I was born. Like love meant letting them hurt me as long as they did it with familiar voices. I gently removed her hand. No, I said. Dad is my family. Then I took him out. I didn't bring him to my apartment at first. I took him to a hotel. A clean one, near the highway, with bright lights and staff at the desk. He was exhausted by the time we got there. I helped him into bed. For a while, he just stared at the ceiling. Then he said, "Sorry." I sat beside him. "For what?" He swallowed. "For not seeing." I knew what he meant. Not seeing how they treated me. Not seeing how much pressure I had carried. Not seeing how the family had quietly arranged itself so that I was useful and everyone else was delicate. I wanted to say it didn't matter. I wanted to be noble. But I was too tired to lie. So I said, "Me too." He nodded. And that was the first honest conversation we had in years. The next morning, everything happened quickly. My mother called 43 times. Emily called 17. Mark sent one text. "Bro, you're making a huge mistake." Uncle Stephen didn't call. That worried me more than the others. I took Dad to a doctor. Not the doctor my mother used. A new one. I explained the situation carefully. Dad was evaluated. The doctor said he was recovering better than expected, but he had been undermedicated in some areas and overmedicated in others. When I asked what that meant, she chose her words carefully. "It means his care needs review." Care needs review. That was the polite medical way of saying something had been wrong. Then we went to a lawyer. Dad brought the documents from the bag. The lawyer reviewed them for almost an hour. His expression got darker with each page. The property transfer form had Dad's signature. But Dad said he never signed it. The bank withdrawal forms were suspicious. The power of attorney document listed my mother as primary and Uncle Stephen as secondary. Dad stared at it and said, "Never signed." The lawyer asked if we had evidence. I showed him the footage. He watched without speaking. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Do not communicate with them except through counsel." That sentence made it real. This wasn't family drama anymore. It was legal. It was abuse. It was fraud. It was everything I had been trying not to name. That afternoon, I read Dad's letter. I waited until he was asleep in the hotel room. I sat by the window with the curtains half closed and opened the envelope carefully. His handwriting was shaky, uneven, sometimes hard to read. But I understood every word. "Danny, if you are reading this, it means I found a way to get it to you. I am sorry. Your mother is not telling you the truth. The money you send is not being used the way you think. I heard them talking about the house. Stephen says I signed papers. I did not. I tried to tell you before, but they watch me. Mark takes my phone. Emily tells your mother everything. I am afraid. Not because they hit me. They do not need to. They make me feel crazy. They tell me I forgot things. They tell me I agreed to things. They tell me you are too busy and tired of me. I do not believe them. You are a good son. Maybe too good. That is why they use you. I should have protected you from that when you were young. I saw it, but I thought you were strong. I thought strength meant you were okay. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Dad. By the time I finished reading, I couldn't see the page. I cried quietly because Dad was sleeping 5 feet away, and I didn't want him to wake up and feel guilty for my pain. But the truth is, that letter broke something open in me. Not just because of what my family had done. Because my father had finally named the thing I had felt my entire life. I was strong. So everyone assumed I was okay. I wonder how many people spend their whole lives like that. Being praised for surviving things they should have been protected from. Being called reliable when they are actually exhausted. Being called dramatic the first time they ask why. That night, Emily came to the hotel. I don't know how she found us. Maybe my mother followed my car. Maybe Mark guessed. Maybe small towns are just impossible places to disappear. She knocked softly. When I opened the door, she was standing there in leggings, a sweater, no makeup, eyes red like she had been crying. For a second, she looked like my little sister again. The girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The girl whose science projects I helped build. The girl I once punched a kid for bullying. Daniel, she whispered. I stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind me. Dad's sleeping. She looked past me. Is he okay? I almost asked if she cared. But I didn't have the energy. What do you want? Her mouth trembled. Mom said you're going to the police. I'm going to do whatever the lawyer says. She's freaking out. She should. Emily wiped her face. Daniel, I didn't know everything. That was the first lie. Not because she knew everything. Maybe she didn't. But she knew enough. And sometimes knowing enough is enough. I said, you knew about the house. She looked down. I thought Mom was just trying to simplify things. By forging Dad's signature. I didn't know it was forged. You laughed. Her head snapped up. What? You laughed when Uncle Stephen talked about practicing Dad's signature. She stared at me. Then her face crumpled. I was uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do. I nodded slowly. That was the line people use when they benefit from something wrong, but don't want responsibility for it. I didn't know what to do. But she did know. She could have called me. She could have warned Dad. She could have left the room. She could have done anything besides sit there and wait for her share. She stepped closer. Please don't ruin my life over this. And there it was. Not Dad's life. Not my life. Her life. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Emily, you helped them steal from a disabled man. He's our father. Exactly. She flinched. Then her sadness turned sharp. You think you're so much better than us because you pay for things. I stared at her. I paid because Mom said Dad needed help. She did need help. With your shopping bags. Her face burned red. You don't know what it's like living there. You're right, I said. I don't. Because I left and built a life. And every time you all had a problem, you reached into that life and took pieces of it. Her eyes filled again. We're family. I shook my head. No. You people I'm related to. She cried harder then. And a year earlier, I would have hugged her. I would have softened. I would have apologized for making her feel bad about the things she had done. That night, I didn't. I went back into the room and locked the door. The next few weeks were ugly. There is no clean way to dismantle a family lie. People think truth solves things. It doesn't. Truth reveals the battlefield. My mother told relatives I had kidnapped Dad. She said I was trying to take control of his money. She said the stroke had made him paranoid and I was exploiting him. Some believed her immediately. That hurt less than I expected. Others called me privately and said they had always wondered where the money was going. That hurt more. Because it meant people noticed. They just didn't act. The lawyer filed the necessary paperwork. The suspicious transfer was frozen. Adult Protective Services got involved. Dad gave statements. I gave statements. The footage was reviewed. Bank records were requested. My mother suddenly became very quiet. Mark disappeared for a while. Emily sent long messages every few days. Some apologetic. Some angry. Some full of memories. Remember when we used to watch cartoons together? Remember when you taught me to drive? Remember when you said you'd always protect me? That one almost got me. Because I did remember. I remembered all of it. And that was the hardest part. When strangers betray you, you can hate them cleanly. When family betrays you, the love doesn't vanish just because the truth appears. It stays there. Bruised. Confused. Looking for the person you thought they were. Some nights, I would wake up angry. Other nights, I would wake up grieving. Not because I wanted them back. Because I wanted back the illusion that they had loved me the way I loved them. Dad moved in with me temporarily. My apartment wasn't ideal, but we made it work. I bought a better chair. I arranged therapy. I learned how to cook low-sodium meals that didn't taste like cardboard. Dad complained about my coffee. I complained about his TV volume. Slowly, strangely, we became closer than we had been before. One evening, about a month after everything happened, I came home from work and found him sitting at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of coffee. One for him. One for me. He had made it himself. Spilled some grounds on the counter. Left a spoon in the sugar bowl. But he looked proud. I made coffee, he said. I smiled. I see that. Bad coffee. Probably. He smiled too. For a moment, it felt normal. Then he said, "Your mother called." I froze. When? Today. What did she say? He looked into his mug. She cried. I pulled out the chair across from him. What did you say? Nothing. I waited. He rubbed his thumb along the mug handle. She said she was scared. Said Stephen pushed her. Said she didn't know how bad it was. I felt anger rise immediately. She knew. I know. She grabbed you. She lied to me. She took money. I know. His voice was quiet. Not defensive. Just tired. I said, "Do you want to go back?" He looked at me then. And for the first time, I saw my father not as the strong man from childhood or the injured man from the stroke. I saw him as a human being. A man who had shared a bed with someone for 35 years and now had to accept that she was willing to erase him for money. No, he said. But I miss who I thought she was. That sentence stayed with me. Because that was exactly it. I missed who I thought they were. I missed my mother from childhood, even if maybe she had never fully existed. I missed Emily before entitlement hardened her. I missed Mark before resentment swallowed him. I missed family dinners where I thought silence meant peace. But missing something doesn't mean you should return to it. Sometimes grief is the price of clarity. 2 months later, Mark showed up at my apartment. He looked terrible. Unshaven. Thinner. Angry before I even opened the door fully. You happy? He said. I kept the chain lock on. What do you want? Mom might get charged. She made choices. His jaw tightened. You really going to act like you're innocent? You sent money because you wanted control. I almost closed the door. But something in me wanted to hear how far he would go. Control of what, Mark? Her bills. Dad's medication. Your beer. He stepped closer. You always thought you were better. No, I said. I thought I had to be better because nobody else was trying. That landed. I saw it in his face. For a second, underneath the anger, there was shame. Then it disappeared. You don't understand what it was like being compared to you. I laughed quietly. Compared to me? Mom made excuses for you your whole life. Because you didn't need her. There it was. The family myth. Daniel didn't need anyone. Daniel was fine. Daniel was strong. Daniel could handle it. I leaned toward the crack in the door. I was a child, Mark. He looked away. I needed her too. He said nothing. I needed Dad too. I needed both of them. But everyone was so busy protecting your feelings and Emily's dreams that nobody noticed I was drowning. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Then he said, quieter, we didn't know. No, I said. You didn't care. He stared at me. And for a moment, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he shook his head. You're going to regret this. I closed the door. My hands were shaking afterward, but not from fear. From finality. There are doors you close gently. And there are doors you close because leaving them open is how poison gets in. The case didn't become some dramatic courtroom movie. Real life rarely does. There were lawyers. Statements. Negotiations. Charges that were threatened. Settlements discussed. Documents invalidated. Funds traced. Some money was gone forever. Some of the damage could be repaired. Most of the emotional damage could not. Uncle Stephen disappeared from the family circle almost instantly. People like him always do. They arrive when there is something to take and vanish when accountability arrives. My mother eventually admitted to poor judgment. That phrase made me laugh when the lawyer read it. Poor judgment. As if she had accidentally overwatered a plant. As if she had not lied about my father's condition, misused money sent for his care, helped push fraudulent documents, and stood in a hallway telling me he was confused while knowing he was terrified. She wrote Dad a letter. He read it once. Then he put it in a drawer. What did it say? I asked. He said, it said she was sorry life became hard. Not sorry for what she did. Sorry life became hard. There's a difference. Emily tried harder than the others to come back into my life. She sent apologies. Some sounded real. Some sounded like panic. I didn't respond for a long time. Then one Sunday afternoon, while Dad was watching baseball, I sat on the balcony and called her. She answered on the first ring. Daniel. Her voice broke on my name. I stared at the street below. I'm not calling to fix things. She was quiet. Okay. I'm calling because I need to say this once. Okay. I took a breath. You were my sister. I loved you. I protected you. I showed up for you even when you didn't show up for me. She cried softly. I kept going. What you did with Mom and Mark didn't just hurt Dad. It showed me that you knew exactly how much I cared and you still used it. I'm sorry, she whispered. I believe you're sorry now. But I don't know if you're sorry because you hurt us or because there were consequences. She sobbed. I closed my eyes. I hope you become someone who understands the difference. She said my name again. I ended the call. Not because I hated her. Because if I stayed, I would start comforting her. And I was done comforting people who hurt me. That was the hardest habit to break. Not giving money. Not answering calls. Not explaining myself. The hardest part was learning not to rescue people from the discomfort of their own actions. For months, I felt cruel. Every time my mother called and I didn't answer, I felt cruel. Every time Emily texted and I left it unread, I felt cruel. Every time a relative said, "But she's still your mother," and I said, "I know," without changing my mind, I felt cruel. But healing taught me something important. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will often call your boundaries cruelty. That doesn't make them right. It just means the old arrangement served them. Dad improved. Not perfectly. Not magically. But steadily. He walked more. Spoke more clearly. Argued with me about politics. Burned toast twice. Forgot where he put his glasses every morning even though they were usually on his head. He started therapy with a counselor who specialized in elder abuse and trauma. At first, he hated it. After the first session, he told me, "I'm not paying someone to ask how I feel." I said, "You're not paying. Insurance is." He said, "Then insurance is stupid." But he kept going. So did I. Because I needed help too. For a long time, I thought trauma had to be loud to count. Violence. Disaster. Something dramatic enough that nobody questioned your pain. But there is trauma in being used quietly for years. There is trauma in emotional debt. There is trauma in realizing your family loved your function more than your person. My therapist asked me once, "Who are you when you're not fixing something?" I didn't know how to answer. That scared me. Because my whole identity had been built around usefulness. Good son. Reliable brother. Strong one. Problem solver. Emergency contact. Human ATM. The one who understands. The one who forgives. The one who comes through. Without those roles, I felt empty at first. Then slowly, I felt free. I started rebuilding my life in small ways. I bought groceries I actually liked. I went to the dentist. I replaced the motorcycle I had sold, not with another motorcycle, but with a simple weekend trip to the mountains, because I realized I didn't need to recreate the old version of myself. I needed to meet the new one. Dad came with me. We rented a cabin with a porch facing pine trees. In the morning, we drank bad coffee and watched fog move between the hills. He said, "Your mother would hate this place. Too quiet." I said, "I like quiet." He nodded. Me too. After a while, he said, "I changed the will." I looked at him. "Dad, you don't have to tell me that. I want to." I waited. The house stays protected. If something happens to me, it goes through the lawyer. Not your mother. Not Stephen. Not anyone who shows up crying. I looked down at my coffee. "I don't want your house." "I know. Then why tell me?" He looked out at the trees. "Because I should have made things clear before. Confusion gives selfish people room." That was one of the wisest things he ever said. Confusion gives selfish people room. And my family had lived in confusion for years. Unclear expectations. Unspoken resentment. Money sent without accountability. Love given without boundaries. Pain buried under phrases like, "That's just how they are." When things stay unclear, the most shameless person usually benefits. Clarity doesn't always bring peace. But it does turn the lights on. Nearly a year after the night I took Dad from the house, I went back there. The legal issues had settled enough that Dad wanted some personal things. His tools. Photo albums. My grandmother's clock. A few boxes from the attic. I didn't want to go. But he asked me to. The house looked the same from outside. White siding. Blue shutters. Cracked driveway. The maple tree in the front yard still leaned slightly to the left. For a second, I expected to see my mother standing in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel, calling me inside. Instead, the house was quiet. She wasn't there. The lawyer had arranged access. I walked through the rooms slowly. Memory is cruel in childhood homes. Every corner holds two versions of the truth. The kitchen where my mother counted birthday candles. The kitchen where she discussed stealing Dad's house. The hallway where I took my first prom photo. The hallway where Dad whispered that he was afraid. The living room where we opened Christmas presents. The living room where I watched them laugh at me through a camera. I found the shelf where I had placed it. The ceramic decorations were still there. A tiny porcelain bird. A cracked vase. A dusty family photo from when I was 14. In the photo, we were all smiling. Dad stood behind us, hands on Mark's and my shoulders. Mom had one arm around Emily. I looked at my younger face. That boy had no idea. He thought love was something you earned by being easy to need. I wanted to reach into the photo and tell him, you don't have to become useful to deserve a place here. But you can't save your younger self. You can only stop abandoning the person he became. In Dad's room, I packed his things carefully. His old watch. A stack of books. A framed photo of him and me at my high school graduation. I didn't know he kept that beside his bed. On the back, in his handwriting, it said, Danny. First in the family. Proud. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time holding that frame. Because healing is strange. You can be angry at someone and still treasure proof that they loved you. You can know they failed you and still be grateful they tried to make it right. Forgiveness, I learned, is not always a clean decision. Sometimes it is a complicated room you enter slowly. I forgave my father. Not all at once. Not because he asked. But because he changed. He told the truth. He accepted responsibility without demanding that I hurry up and feel better. He respected my anger. He did the work. That matters. I have not forgiven my mother. Maybe one day I will. Maybe I won't. I no longer force myself to answer that question for other people's comfort. The last time she contacted me was on my birthday. She left a voicemail. Her voice sounded older. Daniel, happy birthday. I know you don't want to talk to me. I just wanted to say I love you. I hope you're well. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Not because it meant nothing. Because it meant something, and that was dangerous. A few words of tenderness can make you forget years of harm if you are starving for love. I had been starving for a long time. I wasn't going to confuse crumbs with a meal anymore. Dad asked me if I was okay that night. I said, I don't know. He nodded. That's honest. We sat together watching an old movie. Halfway through, he fell asleep in the chair. I looked at him, this stubborn, imperfect man, who had both failed me and saved me by finally telling the truth. And I thought about the camera. That small, ugly decision I still don't feel proud of. People might judge me for it. Maybe they should. But I know this. Without it, my father might have lost his home. I might still be sending money into a lie. My family might still be laughing in rooms I paid to keep warm. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive politely. Sometimes it has to be captured in the dark. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the part nobody warns you about. Everybody says they want the truth. But truth has a cost. The truth cost me my mother. It cost me my sister. It cost me my brother. It cost me the version of my childhood I had protected in my mind. But lies had been costing me too. They were costing me sleep. Money. health, self-respect, years of my life. So maybe the truth didn't destroy my family. Maybe it only revealed that my family had been broken for a long time. And I had been calling the pieces home. If you're listening to this and you're the strong one in your family, I want to say something to you. Being strong does not mean being endlessly available. Being kind does not mean being easy to manipulate. Being family does not give someone the right to drain you, shame you, or punish you for finally saying no. You are allowed to ask where the money is going. You are allowed to question stories that don't make sense. You are allowed to protect vulnerable people, even from relatives. You are allowed to stop playing a role that is killing you quietly. And you are allowed to grieve people you no longer trust. That was the hardest lesson for me. Walking away doesn't always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like carrying a coffin no one else can see. You mourn birthdays that will never feel normal again. Holidays that become smaller. Old jokes that turn bitter in your mouth. You mourn the mother you wanted. The sister you defended. The brother you hoped would grow up. You mourn the version of yourself who believed love would be returned if you gave enough of it. But after the grief, something else comes. Space. Quiet. A morning where your phone rings and your stomach doesn't drop. A paycheck that belongs to you. A dinner you eat without calculating how much someone else needs. A home where help is not demanded through guilt. A life where love feels calm. I still have that footage. I've thought about deleting it many times. Dad told me I should, now that the legal side is over. Maybe he's right. But sometimes, when guilt creeps in, when a relative sends a message saying my mother is lonely, when Emily posts old family photos online with captions about forgiveness. When Mark tells people I tore the family apart, I remember what I saw. Not because I want to stay angry. But because I need to stay awake. That night showed me the truth. My family didn't break me when I saw what they were doing. They had been breaking me slowly for years. The camera only showed me where the cracks came from. And once I saw that, I stopped handing them the hammer. So no, this story doesn't end with a perfect reunion. My mother didn't suddenly become honest. My siblings didn't gather around a table and apologize with tears while soft music played. We didn't heal as a family. Not every story gets that ending. Some stories end with one person choosing peace over belonging. Some stories end with a father and son drinking bad coffee in a small apartment, learning how to speak honestly for the first time. Some stories end with silence from people who once filled your life with noise. And sometimes, that silence is not emptiness. Sometimes, it is freedom. My name is Daniel. I installed a hidden camera because I thought my father was in trouble. What I saw broke my heart. But it also saved my life. Because that night, I finally understood something I should have known years earlier. A family that only loves you when you are useful is not a family.